There is only love.
Good morning. It is Bastille Day. Yeah, it's also my sister's birthday, so I had to give her a little shout out. And today's talk title is the recognition of the national holiday in France, Bastille Day. So historians love to have start-stop dates, right? So this is one of those in France. This is the date they picked for the start of the French Revolution. And the Bastille, if you don't know, was a fortress that through the 1700s anyway, maybe even before that, was used to house prisoners, particularly those found guilty of sedition, which meant they were saying stuff against the king, which was uncool apparently. But at this time, on this day, after decades of suffering, Parisian peasants, later joined by defecting French soldiers, stormed this fortress, the Bastille, looking for gunpowder and ammunition, because that's what it was used for mostly then, although they did have like 7 prisoners at the time, I think. So the end result was 95 attackers being killed, a couple, I think 1 or 2 soldiers. And so the result of that was that the Bastille became a symbol of resistance against the tyranny of the monarchy and the nobility, and also the clergy, right? So mostly the Catholic Church at that time, because both were pretty corrupt at the time. So kind of in the same way that that the Alamo is kind of in the United States is that symbol of resistance, the Bastille is kind of that. So, and as I said, you know, it also happens to be my sister's birthday, so happy birthday, Teresa. A fortress in her own right. So she's definitely a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, she was number 2, right? So I got to cruise, basically go through life on cruise control, and she was the enforcer. So of my 5 younger brothers. So but instead of looking at this as a start-stop date. Oh yeah, I had this from my sister. Yippee! The Eiffel Tower, big fireworks, happy birthday. So if we look at this moment, at this touchstone in time, this point in time, as a moment in the continuum of consciousness that is human development, that we will see that really what this conflict was a clash of opposing ideas. So on the one hand, the old ideas of absolute rule, of the divine right of kings, right, of the king and the nobility, that extended to the nobility as well. And on the other side, a group of ideas that were emerging as a result of the Enlightenment. So these ideas had been gestating for about 100 years or so. The idea that of the basic rights of all men to live in respect of each other as equal citizens, to live life in confidence and safety, knowing that the state will not only protect those rights, but also encourage people to exercise those rights within what? Within the law. So the power over the people was by consent of the governed to the state. Now, we'd already had our revolution in America by that time. We were in the mop-up stage, as we say, in modern parlance. And as we know, compared to the American Revolution, the French Revolution was a very bloody affair. But let's face it, there was enough suffering to go around on both continents. The aftermath in France, however, was much more dire, for it was followed by plague and lawlessness. So there are all kinds of reasons as to why this took place, but perhaps one of the reasons was that it took folks a while to learn how to live under the law. To learn how to live in freedom. To learn how to live under the law. So the same is true in the natural world. Right? So that we must learn how to live under the law. Now some of these things we've learned intuitively. Our buildings, for instance, have been constructed knowing that, well, not even knowing, but they've been constructed under the law of gravity. Right? So we have to accommodate for the law of gravity, and through trial and error we've learned how to build our buildings. That our motors are driven by the law of electricity. Now, did the law of electricity, was it there when we were still living in caves? Yes. Was it there when Henry VIII ruled? Yes. Right? But we didn't know it yet. So, as we learned more, we learned that we are governed by other laws that up until now had gone undetected. So the laws of celestial mechanics that keeps this beautiful planet of ours in that perfect zone for sustaining life around our sun. You know, it's said that if we were, I think it's like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of miles one way or the other, that life could not exist on this planet. So we're in the sweet spot of celestial mechanics. Right? And the laws of thermodynamics that affect everything from climate to computer chips. Our cell phones use wavelengths of light that cannot be seen, but are nonetheless there. In fact, those wavelengths were only theory. They were only theoretical until Einstein and others started thinking deeper about the nature of something as basic as light, which led others to consider the nature of reality itself. Another kind of revolution, complete and total revolution, where we recognize really, maybe for the first time, for all that we know, there's so much more that we don't know. Now the interesting thing about this is that the Enlightenment came about because people, we stepped away really from metaphysics, right? From seeing that our lives were unfolding by unseen causes to where if we couldn't measure it, it didn't exist. That's really what the Enlightenment was based on. Getting away from the superstition of what the dominant religious thinking was at that time, to understanding that what we can see and measure, that's reality. And so I find it interesting today that now the things come full circle, as the quantum physicists are now groping with language that sounds very much like metaphysics to me, to describe the natural world, so that there is an understanding that there's something greater going on. That our understanding in the mental side of life really can't even work unless we start playing with multiple dimensions. That the mathematics just don't work. That the numbers don't add up unless we account for, I think it's 11 dimensions, of which this is one. Kind of trippy. So, the question today is, we have this clash of ideas represented by Bastille Day, that we recognize that prisons are built to hold people, right? And that today in the modern world, they're often, and hopefully always, but not always, used to hold people for acts of lawlessness. At least that's the goal. So that for most of us, we live under the law. Those of us who live under the law and live in respect of the law, we are free to roam around. But the question I would put to you, though, is, are we really free? are we truly free? Are we truly living a life that cultivates freedom? And if not, why not? Are our old ideas of that's just the way it is keeping us imprisoned in ways of living life small? Or if we are not working or cultivating a portion of our life, if not all of it, at least working a portion of it towards some dream or goal that has yet to be fully realized in our life, what's holding us back? And I think what holds most of us back are these old constructs of how we see ourselves. We really do not have an accurate self-image of who and what we are. And if you think about it, there really can't be. Think of the way a mirror looks. We look in a mirror, we think we look a certain way. The rest of the world sees us in reverse. Right? If you hold a book up to a mirror, what happens? The lettering's reversed, yes? So if you think about that, even the most basic thing about us is a lie. The way that we see ourselves. It's a misperception. In fact, I was, yesterday, I think it was Reverend Nancy was telling me the story of how they had an artist, and they brought subjects in, one of these psychological studies, where they called the person in and asked them to describe themselves to the artist. And the artist then, like one of those police guys who does the sketching, drew a picture of the person that they were describing as themselves. So then they called in one of their friends to describe this person to the same artist, right? Completely different image. So what their friend saw was actually the image of what they looked like. What this one subject said, well, I have a puffy face, my hair is all flat, I got a big blemish on my face. And what the other person saw, they're beautiful, they have this great hair with a little bit of wave to it, they have this beautiful complexion, right? A complete different image. And so I think what happens is, one of the reasons why we play small is I think we're afraid to step out and really say out loud how great we think we are. Not in a boastful or a narcissistic way, but looking at the reality and the evidence of our life and focusing on the path that we've been on and focusing on the continuum of good that has demonstrated itself in our life, which it has. Otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? But instead, what do we focus on? We often struggle on the hardship, the struggle, what we look like, body image, particularly in our culture, how old we are, whether we've been educated, and even on baser levels of what I drive, the neighborhood I live in, what I eat. Now, designer foods are like the thing, right? If you're not eating organic food, then you're not enlightened. So the question I'm going to put to you then is from a fellow who knows something about prisons, and that being Nelson Mandela. So we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant? Who am I to be gorgeous, handsome, beautiful, talented, and fabulous? Who am I to think those things about myself? But he puts the question to you and to me, actually, who are we not to be that? So if you need permission to know that about yourself, I'm giving it to you right now. Hopefully you don't need it, right? I give you permission to find friends who support that idea for you until you know it for yourself. I give you permission to go out and get all new friends if that's what it takes. Right? I have this one buddy of mine, he's like my brother, but I got to limit access to him because he wants to have the ain't it awful discussion, which is always about politics. Right? Always. And we share the same politics. Right? But man, I feel like I need a shower afterwards. Love the guy to death. So, what ways of living are governing our life right now? Really? Looking at our lives realistically, what ways of living, what ways of thinking are governing our life right now? Are we truly free within the life that we are currently living? And this is the work that we're doing in class throughout the summer, in this Prosperity Plus class with Mary Morrissey. We're challenging the old paradigm of how we have experienced our life up until now. We are storming the Bastille, looking for ammunition and powder to effect real change in our life. To claim back the things that have been sucking the life that we want to have right out of the life that we are living today, to take that back, to claim it, take it back, and take that power and transform it into that which we want. So the only thing that we are blowing up is our old way of looking at parts of our life. So we don't have to blow everything up to smithereens to have a more effective life. We really don't. We just have to be more conscious, more aware, or be willing to cultivate more awareness and then more consciousness of living life affirmatively to change it. So we look at what up until now has kept us bound, and we use that bondage then. We use what has kept us bound up until now to secure our freedom. That the ammunition that we're looking for are new ideas available to us through the infinite youth, the infinite creative mind, and that the powder is the power of infinite mind as law to compel our new ideas into full and complete demonstration, to launch them. Right? And the universe provides the rifling so that we shoot true and straight to the mark. So Ernest Holmes once said that freedom and bondage are merely two ways of expressing limitless possibility. Freedom and bondage are merely two ways of expressing limitless possibilities. So in this way then, bondage is a way that we use freedom. I think that's up here. Yeah, bondage is a way that we use freedom. To assert our individuality is to rise above the law of what? The law of averages into that more highly specialized use of law, which brings freedom rather than bondage. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing, because particularly if what we really need is an extra $1,000 a month to make our life comfortable, right? When we need some extra bucks to make the rent or to pay the light bill. Right? But if you think about the most basic need underneath all of that stuff, our wants, our desires, the striving, the getting, all that stuff, is that we're longing to be free to express fully and completely. And sometimes money is the coin of the realm in that area. And it's but a tool that we use to achieve what? The greater vision, the greater dream of our life. So then Holmes asks us then, what does it mean? We've heard the expression around here, if you've been around here for a while, that we are bound because we are first free. The power which appears to bind us is the only power in the universe that can free us. That power is the law. It's the law, our conscious use of law, so that we then become the avenue for Spirit to do its thing, which is to create by means of this faculty which we call law, this aspect of God as expression, as activity, as power. So then our task then becomes to be the switch. All we have to do is say on, off. Right? I turn to the light, I turn away from the light. This is what prayer is, right? When we pray, we are turning to the light. You know, the ancients used to pray like this, right? To the light. Recognizing that there's an opening. There's an opening. I'm ready to receive, as Jack's song says. And there's a conscious component of it, an active component, that we are the change agent in our life, using the tool of love and law to live our life more effectively. And in living our life more effectively, we lift others in the process. Because it's not any fun unless we're taking folks with us. Right? It's not any fun unless we take folks with us. So last night, I was exposed to a very dynamic idea of how we can all be change agents for good that I'm going to address next Sunday. And it's about taking the idea of that old movie about paying it forward and activating it in a really simple but incredibly dynamic way that will demonstrate the multiplicity of good in the universe by means of each one of us. So the other thing that I like about this is, it's not about deserving. It's about accessing and using God power. So there's an act of faith that's involved in that. And that we continue to keep. If at first we don't demonstrate, we continue to stay anchored in our practice until we do demonstrate the life that we want. And it's not about deserving or earning anything. So again, Nelson Mandela, who said, "I'm not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." So, that idea of sin, and really for those of us who grew up in that paradigm, that really has to be washed away once and for all, for us to really step into our birthright. The truth is that we are born into an abundant universe. The truth is that there is enough to go around. The truth is that you are enough. That there is enough of you to go around. So in those ways that we feel not up to the task, it's a time that we can go within to marshal our power, to gain the ammunition and powder to break down the old ways of thinking, so that we too can have our own Bastille day. So let's go within for a moment as I invite the band to. So let's all take a deep breath together. Release it. So this isn't really a holiday that we think much about here in America, but I love the imagery of the fortress being blown up, I have to say. Right? Because sometimes that's the way our mind is around certain things. Right? We've blown up the fortress of institutional racism. That took 200 years to actually write the laws, to blow it up. We're still seeing the effect of that. Right? So that story is still unfolding. The fortress of women don't have a place. That is being blown up until now. Our gay brothers and sisters, those ideas now being blown up. And what comes forth in this modern era, thankfully, is not pestilence. It's not lawlessness. But instead, an awareness of the commonality of observing the sacred within all beings. So today, as we go about our business, let's just focus on how can I be more free today in this moment. What old idea, what old resentment, what do I need to forgive maybe to be more free? What idea do I need to cultivate and spend a half an hour with today to allow intuition to provide us with that avenue of thought that sees us out of where we are today into the next now. Knowing that we are living, moving, and we have our being in this thing that we call.
There is only